Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of American Grit with myself, TIm Jensen. I've got with us today on the program a couple of hard hitters from the state of Arizona. We are talking about a lot of different things on this program, a lot of it mental health, homelessness, and things that are affecting the veteran community. And this is another one of those episodes. We've been talking a lot about mental health within the last few episodes of this program. However, we don't really spend a lot of time talking about the homelessness factors in the way that I think we should, right? For myself, veteran homelessness is one of the larger things I think is something that we don't talk about within this country. I've made the joke several times that we've done a really good job of conditioning everybody in this country to say thank you for your service, but they do that while they're stepping over the homeless individual, maybe throwing a nickel or a dollar bill into a cup while they're sitting on the side of the road. We can do a better job, and there are some really great states that are doing a great job in combating veteran homelessness. San Antonio, the state of Texas, San Antonio leads the way with a lot of programming that's happening within the city itself. Haven for Hope is one of those organizations that are leading the way. But this model is being taken to other places and being built in ways that are having real impacts within those communities. And we're going to hop over to the state of Arizona, where I think that there are two individuals that are doing some great work on the ground, and they've been doing it for a very long time. So welcome to the show, Chuck Byers and my friend Ben Jeffries. So gentlemen, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Well, I've been a strong veterans advocate for a long time. Being a Vietnam veteran, my call sign in Vietnam was Big Band-Aid. So I guess you kind of know what I did. I was a medic. I was doc. Someone did a takeoff one time on a medic and a corpsman, and they said, first time someone gets hit, they holler, doc, medic, corpsman. And we used to say, well, I don't make house calls. Take 2 APCs and call me in the morning. Well, we couldn't do that. We can't do that now. We're there for you. So, but I've been advocating strongly since I've gotten out. And I started certainly with a nursing career from Vietnam, from being a combat medic, went to Walter Reed Army Institute of Nursing, was on the presidential ward for about 6 months, so I had a chance to meet some really interesting people that were there. And, later on, I just, got involved. I got involved in advocating and certainly the toxic exposure, the Agent Orange that we've been fighting for a long, long time, and finally getting the PACT Act and finally getting some recognition, getting the presumptives. These are the things that we really, really been trying hard. So I came out to Arizona. I was on Chris Christie's task force for veterans in New Jersey. And I figured if I could deal with Chris Christie, I could deal with anybody out in Arizona, Sure. And that's kind of what happened. So I've been out there, and I started, we're looking at what can I do to help veterans. And I became an accredited veteran service officer. So I really got into the weeds, got the benefits, got there, became accredited through the Office of General Counsel. And so I represented a lot of veterans and, helped them with their benefits and worked closely. And then continued on, and 2018, I was inducted into the Arizona Veterans Hall of Fame, and just continued. And I guess, working with the congressional side, working with the leaders, I had a chance to have a one-on-one with John McCain before the Choice Act, and we actually got it started. And when the Mission Act got signed in 2018, I was invited actually to be on the platform in the Rose Garden when the Mission Act got signed by President Trump. And I am standing there, the tallest guy, and so they had me in the back. And I think Elizabeth Dole was in front of me, and I was standing there by Tom Cotton. Trump signed it, and he handed me a pen, and I thanked him, and he said, no, thank you for your service. So I've been really working hard and with the advocating on legislative side. But what we're seeing is that we do have a really bad homeless problem in Arizona. And that's where I wanted to get involved in. And so I looked at we have transitional housing. Yeah, I have all these different transitional housing, but that's short term. But what happens after short term? And that's what we're here to talk about at the Tanner Village, and what we're doing. And it's not just, and I don't call them tiny homes out in Arizona. We call them IDCs. And I like the word individual dwelling casitas.
Yeah. Well, I like anything with an acronym because I've been blown up a lot, and it's hard for me to remember things.
That's right. IDCs. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Chuck, the work that you've been doing out there, I've recently learned a lot of the things that you were doing, right, through an introduction with Ben Jeffries here. Yeah. And it's phenomenal. Like your commitment to the veteran community has been steadfast over many decades. Yeah. Right. So I appreciate all the work that you've done for your brothers and sisters of your generation, and putting your attention towards the GWAT generation. There's a lot to clean up here, right? We have some things that we've started with the PACT Act, and there's a lot more work that needs to be done. I think that we can solve a lot of problems because we have a very motivated group of veterans of this generation that wants to solve and put a lot of these problems to rest, right? And create a new opportunity for future generations of veterans. So now look at you, Ben, right, and some of the things that you've been engaged in your life and your career, and seeing it from the perspective of homelessness all the way to where your position is now. Share. I'd love to hear what your perspective of the situation in Arizona is from the work that you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate being here. My name is Ben Jeffrey. I Sacramento, California, 1971. Grew up in a world famous biker family. So I grew up around a lot of bikers, a lot of black jackets, and got taken away by the state from our parents, and ended up in a receiving home, and got put on an airplane out to Beaumont, Texas, and got adopted by my uncle, who's a Texas super lawyer, and graduated one of the top 100 private high schools in the country. So I had a good high school education, but after high school, all my friends went to Harvard and Yale, and I didn't have any money. So I joined the Navy, and I went over at the end of Desert Storm over in Japan, and did 2 combat deployments in the Persian Gulf. And I launched F-14s. I'm deafer than hell. I launched 120 sorties a day for weeks on weeks. Received a couple ribbons, a couple medals. Just did a couple of years active duty. So I'm a regular veteran. I'm just a regular veteran. And
you didn't write any books about.
Well, I mean, I partied in Tokyo. I learned how to surf in Bondi Beach, Australia. I had a hell of I bought a video camera in Hong Kong, went around the world. It was amazing. And I saw a bird. I knew I was close to land when I saw a bird 50 miles off of Kuwait. And I wrote to my girlfriend back when we had to write letters in 1992. And I'm like, I saw a bird today. I know we're close to land. And we just started bombing Saddam, Yeah. But anyway, so I get out of the military, and I don't go to the VA. I'm not a welfare case. That was my attitude. And there was no such thing as PTSD back in the 90s. There was no mental acuity. And so I lived my life, and I took the discipline and the grit, and I learned how to be a father, and I'm a little guy, but I'm an iron worker. I'm a journeyman iron worker. So I spend a career building high rises, Navy SEAL training bases around the country. And then one day when my kids were growing up, I fell hard into drugs. And I became homeless. Like, I'm 48 years old, and I'm homeless. And all of a sudden the cost of living goes up, and I've got a needle stuck in my arm. So I'm just a regular veteran, an honorable veteran. And I, for the last 3 years of my sobriety, I have learned everything you can possibly know about the homeless policies and procedures at the state and federal and local level. And I am a big advocate on the gap analysis of what is going on, what is supposed to be going on,
Yeah.
what needs to happen, and how do we get there? So I'm on subcommittees. I'm with Chuck at the Veteran Caucus. I'm looking into psilocybin research legislation, and we're looking at permanent supportive housing with wraparound services.
Yeah.
So I can talk a lot about that. But yeah, that's my introduction.
Yeah. Well, Ben, thank you for sharing. Right. That the transparency and the vulnerability of sharing that story is difficult, right? And but these are the stories that our community needs to be hearing, because there are so many within the veteran community right now that are struggling and are in the same position of saying, "Hey, man, like." Am I going to use today, or am I? What decisions am I going to make today, right? And how am I going to get through the day today? All the tough choices that I have to make, in regards to my family, my job, all these different things, right? And there's so many that feel like they're just getting beaten up every day, right? And these are the important conversations. We could talk about cars and all the other great forms of entertainment. And have a lot of fun doing that. But I find that these conversations are more valuable to me in sharing with our communities of how can we make a better choice of being involved. How do we get involved in ways, in our local community that, we are addressing some of these things, because it's our responsibility, right? We have a responsibility to each other. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's really important. Now, when we talk about the homelessness within the state of Arizona, right? You had mentioned to me in conversation, there's about 267,000 veterans in the state of Arizona. Where do you think the percentage of homelessness of the veterans is currently there?
Well, and I know Chuck's thinking it, but there's 500+ thousand veterans in Arizona. But in Maricopa County, one of the largest counties in the country, there's 267,000 veterans in this massive county made up of 20 cities, Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa.
Gotcha.
And so you've got 267,000, you got like 40,000 Vietnam veterans, you got the Iraq Freedom. You've just got a large demographic. At 7.8% of the population are veterans in Maricopa County, and you're talking about 4.7 million people. And so, but the problem is, when you go into the military, if I may, when you go into the military, I've got friends that are special forces, SEALs. They flip you on like a switch, and then one day they flip your switch off. Thank you for your service. It's a tough world out there. Kick you in the ass. Good luck to you.
Yeah.
And you're in the military. Military takes care of you, and then you get out of the military, and you just don't know how to acclimate or to reintegrate into society, because you're used to living on base and going to the mess decks or whatnot. And so there's a problem there. There's a problem there that if a soldier honorably serves and they don't know what to do, then we should have a robust system in place. And so for that reason, I just think that there's a minor disconnect where 90% of the veterans have a lot of discipline, and they know how to go get a job and become an executive up in C-suite. But there's a percentage, about 10%, that don't know how to do it right, and we got to take care of them with the programs. It's our patriotic moral obligation to honor the social contract that we have with veterans.
Yeah. Now you've mentioned, I'd mentioned Haven for Hope as a program that's happening here in San Antonio. That is, that program is being replicated across the United States due to its success. You've studied a lot, trying to get yourself smart on the subject. What is it about that program that you find so endearing, that you're like, man, like they've got it right? What can we do that they're doing here in Phoenix, Maricopa County, or where in the state of Arizona, just in general?
Yeah, big shout out to San Antonio. What happened was it's actually a documentary. It's called Finding Hope Beyond Homelessness. And they made it a few years ago. And what it was is the mayor of San Antonio back in 2010, I forget his name, Herberger or something like that. He got the stakeholders together and he said, let's solve homelessness. And he got all the corporate billionaires together and they collaborated and they did it. They reduced homelessness in San Antonio by 80% over the last 14 years. And the reason why it works, it's the philosophy. It's called housing first. And if I could have a Reader's Digest version of this, I would say that what the philosophy that the federal government wants us to follow is to house a veteran. If we're going to just talk about a veteran, right? What you're supposed to do is house a veteran first. Well, because if my backpack's not going to get stolen, if nobody's going to try to rape me underneath the bridge, well, what we're supposed to do is give them an apartment, a low-income subsidized apartment, and then once they can lock the door, flush the toilet, take a shower, go to bed without looking over their shoulder, and open the fridge, that's a miracle. Yeah. So you give them housing first, and then the next day, a social worker knocks on the door. How you doing? How can we help you? Justice involvement, addressing all social determinants of health. And that's the answer. The answer is give them a low-income subsidized unit and then wrap them around with social services until they can get out of the program.
Yeah.
And that's what we're supposed to be doing. And we don't do it everywhere. But Houston does it. Texas does it. San Antonio does it. Austin does it. You guys are the greatest thing in the world. And everybody's looking to you for answers.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It is fascinating. Just to see in the time period I've lived in San Antonio for about 8 years now, and seeing the addressing of the population, right, the homeless population here, it is rather interesting how effective that plan has been, right, and they've. But I still see some of the things that you would normally see, like you got the Supreme Court that is just ruled against homelessness, right? Put some the deterrence out, like the spike delay down, all that stuff. I get it. It's unsightly, to see people sitting on the side of the street. But are we as a society are just going to accept passing laws in the sake of like, oh, this is more humane than stopping getting to have a relationship with or a relationship with that individual and trying to find out how do we address the needs of you as a person, right, to meet those Maslow's hierarchy of needs and get you back on a path of success, right? But we do not want to do that as a society because it is. We talked about this previously. Chasing the dollar. We're managing things, and we're not trying to solve problems.
We created a society too expensive to live in because we're 7 million homes, single-family homes, short of where we should be. Because after the Great Recession of 2008 to 10, we failed to immediately start building housing. Yeah. So what happens is, as the population density grows and all of the corporate executives are renting apartments and the people that work at the convenience store and the Taco Bell get squeezed out, and suddenly we've created a society too expensive to live in, and now grandma's on with a walker living on the sidewalk, and we're looking at grandma like she's got a behavior problem, or maybe is it structural violence? Yeah. And we're starting to treat people like they're disposable.
Yeah. It's it is is it a chicken or the egg situation in terms of like how are we addressing or even looking at the problems?
It's an affordability problem, in my opinion.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of things that come into that. Like is it questions of education that are those barriers? What is it, right? In the conversation of managing problems versus finding solutions, right? What is if we were to take the path of finding the solution, where does that take you, Ben?
Well, I like the question. The thing that jumped out at my head, Tim, is when I was in Japan in the 7th Fleet, I received hazardous duty pay, imminent danger pay, flight deck pay, and a cost of living adjustment due to the yen.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is a COLA? What is a cost of living adjustment? It means that they adjusted for the cost of living with my military paycheck. Well, how come 3 people that I know that are all damn good workers, they have to live in a 1-bedroom all shacked up together because they all can't make enough money to pay $2,700 rent for a 1 or 2-bedroom apartment?
Right,
It's
right.
outrageous. What was your question? I don't know.
I think that just suffices as an answer, right? No, but there has to be solutions, right? We have to really think about how we are addressing the problems today, right?
Right.
What is driving homelessness in America, right? Is it
there's very little affordable housing. I
Right.
mean, that's what it comes down to, and sustainable, affordable housing. And we're having such a large growth in Phoenix right now. All of a sudden, we're having a lot of people from California moving over to Arizona and Texas too, I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really increasing our population. But the thing is that we don't have enough affordable housing for, lower income. I mean, that's it. And we would say, well, let's use the HUD-VASH vouchers to help them, with this housing situation. But the problem is landlords aren't even taking the HUD-VASH vouchers because they can get more.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, we got to look at what we're doing. So that's why we looked at this, and that's why we're building this community.
Yeah.
And it's only 37 casitas, but at least it's a start. And it's a start because it's affordable, and it'll be able. But it also, we're looking beyond that. I'm actually developing a program saying, say goodbye to your landlord, as the next phase. Because you put somebody in, you take the homeless, they go through the transitional phase. What's after the that's where we're at. After the transitional, they could stay there as long as they can, but we want them to graduate and eventually leave that area and have affordable housing for them. And that's what the next phase is, where we're going.
Right. Now, and you're speaking specifically of the Tanner Village,
Yeah, right.
Thomas, Tanner Thomas.
Thomas Tanner, yeah.
It's a mouthful. TTVV, right?
Yeah, right.
But so that's a step in the direction of solutions, right? We are moving away
Right.
from It goes back to what you were saying, Ben, where you're bringing people into an environment, then you're encapsulating them with the services that is needed to not necessarily a parachute, but to set them on the path of addressing the things that they need to address that put them into the position of homelessness.
This isn't case management.
Right.
This is not case management. It's resource advocacy.
Yeah.
So that's where we're looking at what kind of resources can we provide. And we can do that with the community. We can bring in all these resources that make it available. They're looking for jobs. They're looking for other, the health care, the benefits, all these things we can bring directly to the community.
Right. Now, what in the current model of that, you said about 36 casitas.
Mm-hmm.
What is the average time frame that a veteran will be in one of those positions?
I don't know how to answer that. You could probably answer that a little bit more.
Yeah. It depends. The way HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, VASH, Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing, the way HUD-VASH works, or SSVF, Supportive Services for Veteran Families, whether it's an SSVF client or a HUD-VASH client, they will be allowed, coming in indigent, to stay there permanently unless their gross income exceeds $31,600 a year.
Got it. Yeah.
Once they exceed that amount, then they don't qualify to recertify, and then they need to move on because now they can afford to not be to have to need the subsidy.
Yeah.
So the answer is that permanent supportive housing with wraparound support means that if you are indigent or disabled and you have one leg or one eye and you're just kind of disabled, you can live there permanently. But to Chuck's point, the point is that the problem with the system currently is people call it like a welfare queen, right? Or a welfare king. Like what you just sitting on the couch, you're getting your voucher, you're in Section 8, you ain't doing nothing. Okay. Well, our goal is to get them to the point where we address all the social determinants of health, workforce development, health and wellness, justice involvement, higher education, and then in substance use disorder if needed, and then encourage them to build a resume, help them get income to exceed that, and help them buy a home.
Yeah.
And so the possibilities are endless on how to do it. But to your question, the average length of stay is going to depend on how damn good a case manager is on helping somebody give them a hand up, get up on their feet, and then exceed their own income so they can go live happily ever after somewhere.
Yeah.
Or if they need to stick around, stick around.
Yeah.
You got to give them something to look forward to. If you just take care of them and this is just, this is your handout.
Yeah.
What do you have to look forward to? That's where we think that our model.
Well, it's just continuing the same behavior, right?
Exactly.
Right. It's
right.
like,
right.
Now you were mentioning that maybe a point of clarity is you mentioned that it's not case management, right? That these people are.
It's a resource advocate.
Resource advocacy.
Yeah.
But is there case management involved to a degree? You're saying that there is. What does that mean?
It just means that case management is case management, and it's good.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with case management, but really, a good case manager is a resource advocate. So I'm gonna, and I think this would be a good way to answer. If I walk up to somebody on the street, take a step back, and I want to help somebody. Now I can give them water, food, shelter, offer them a job, but if they don't get up, and if they don't accept it, and if they don't tie their shoes and participate, then am I enabling them?
Right.
Or, so what needs to happen is it's got to be a 50-50 thing. So what my philosophy is that in order to solve homelessness, not only what you do with a veteran, a homeless veteran, is you go, hey man, thank you for your service. Here's a home. Now, will you participate in a transformational program? That's what Haven for Hope does in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Transformational programming works. So you address all of the issues and you build them up and you meet them 50-50 on everything. Why 50-50? If I give you 51%, you're only giving 49, what did I just rob you of?
Yeah.
I robbed you of 1% of your own efficacy. So case management is really advocating for resources to keep them at 50, to empower the veteran to help themselves with resources, and then be there to always be a shadow guidance. So the case management comes from doing it yourself. We're going to help you.
What do
go
I
do it
always
yourself.
say?
It's a hand up rather than just a handout.
Handout.
Yeah, and it's important, right? Especially within our community, right? We are a very prideful bunch of people, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard for a veteran to ask for help to begin with, right? You see that over and over again with the reluctancy of going to the VA because there's somebody else out there that deserves it more than I do. Well, we see that behavior all the time. Mm-hmm. I think it's absolutely important to really recognize some of the challenges that we are dealing with when walking into the community of how are you going to bring fundamental change. Well, we have to change the attitudes, we have to change perceptions, we have to change behaviors, right? And that's no small task, to the point of being a resource manager or a resource advocate, right? You have to build a substantial network to really start changing all those behaviors over, or at least putting it in front of the individual and saying, hey, have you thought about looking at things a little bit differently in this area of, self-health or things of that nature?
Yeah. I'd love to jump in on this. Here's my perspective. As a professional outreach person that is capable of strategic engagements, meeting people where they are, turning a bucket over that was used to defecate in underneath the camp and down in a river bottom, turn that bucket over and sit down and talk to a guy over a campfire and say, hey, what's going on with you, man? And here's what you find out. Maricopa County, 1,000 homeless veterans. Just by the numbers, you probably got 1,000 homeless veterans or more in this large area, and they're already disillusioned and disenfranchised and feel ostracized from society. My government, my society doesn't care about me. Well, F the government, F society. I don't care about you. I don't care about your laws, and I'm going to live in this encampment on this canal, or down in this river bottom, or underneath this bridge. And what needs to happen is there needs to be strategic outreach where you go meet them, you do it by the book, which is what we're good at, and then you help them get connected to services. If you're VHA eligible and you've never gone down to the VA and got connected to services, we will go with you.
Yeah.
And then because 40 to 50% of the veterans don't even use the VA.
Yeah.
And the Mission Act that Chuck was talking about, the whole point of the Mission Act was to address opioid addiction, create a community care for veterans' choice, and to increase outreach efforts per the federal government. We're supposed to be out there finding the homeless veterans to solve the problem, get them connected.
Yeah.
And right now there's a lack of connection. So that's what my focus is. How do we go find them?
Yeah.
And that's why I wear fatigues.
Yeah.
They see me in fatigues and combat boots, and they think, hey, maybe that guy's service connected like me.
Yeah.
And then they come up to me.
Yeah. It's certainly reduces the barriers, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I think with when we go back to Thomas Tanner Village, the veteran village, how that is a very unique way of coming about this, right? We've seen in other instances the tiny homes that are coming. St. Louis, right, is a big area for that. It's where a lot of the initiative started. You're seeing it in other areas of the country. I do like the way of calling it IDC. That sounds a little bit far better than a tiny home.
Yeah. Well, these are 600 square foot casitas.
Yeah.
We have 600 square foot casitas and 400 square foot casitas. When you talk about tiny homes, you're looking at 250 to 300, sometimes much smaller.
Sure.
So it's a little bit larger. I want to give
studio
them
apartment.
a living. Yeah, it's like a studio apartment. They have a kitchenette. They got a washer and dryer. They've got a dishwasher even. Yeah. And you know what's really interesting? A lot of the veterans have service pets. We have doggy doors. Yeah. I'll make sure doggy doors are in there. And with this community and support that. So that's why it really gives them a place to call home. Yeah. And with that, it'll be turnkey. That's where the veterans in the area have come together, veterans helping veterans, and have adopted a casita. And say, we're willing to furnish this thing totally. And we'll give money so that they can have a personalized small voucher that they can personalize what they have. So when they come into this, it's totally turnkey for them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. 600, 400 square feet, 600 square feet for a single individual. I'm assuming the 600 would be probably, you guys offering like families into these? Is there
the thing is that we
individual IDC, Tim.
IDC individual right now. But we do see families, and that's where we're seeing women and children. And if we have to, we'll put two of these together.
Yeah,
Because,
that's a really interesting question, right? You know,
women and children are the fastest growing
population of homeless in the United States right now, and within the veteran community, like. We already have a lot of risk and danger, right, from a lot of these, females being exposed to MSC, MST, right, and so they're coming in. Those are some really complex issues to be adding into a homeless situation, and even with a homeless and family situation, right, that you're seeing. How are you navigating those waters?
Well, I think we have to take each individual case. I actually am working on a women's shelter for women's and family shelter in another area. So I'm already looking at that because I do see that as an increase, and we need to be able to provide that as well. And using the same concept, but actually and have women be part of that as part of the resource advocate. On that. And that's what we're going to have here at Thomas Tanner. We will have, a person there that will help with the women and sheltering the women.
So you have 36 units now, casitas. What is the goal? How big do you anticipate this thing?
Well, I mean, the goal. Well, that's all. Unfortunately, with the land that was donated to us, and that's a problem too. Is getting the property and getting the land. However, we've been granted not the Thomas Tanner, but through our 501c3, 700 acres in, upstate Arizona. Yeah. And right out between Show Low and Snowflake, which is a little bit higher elevation and nicer. So
are the people in Snowflake bitches? I'm just kidding.
Snowflake, no.
Edit that out.
It's a huge Mormon community.
A lot of Karens. A lot of Karens.
Yeah. But it's what I envision, and this is my dream before I pass away, is to build a large, kind of an area that people can go there and enjoy the environment and fishing. I mean, some of the greatest trout fishing in the world is right there. So if I can do something like that, I really wanted to build something like that.
It's a marvelous piece of land. Right? 700 acres. You can do certainly
different parcels.
A lot of great work there.
Yeah. Equine therapy. I think bring things like that into play with the veterans, and that's what we're trying to do.
And I think that's important. I think that's a great segue into some of the mental health challenges that are facing veterans in the state of Arizona. Right. Some of the work that we've been doing in the state of Missouri. We've identified that some veteran suicide in the state of Missouri is extremely high. Yeah. Extremely high. Right. And you can look across the country. It is not good. Right. We hear the numbers 22 a day. It's simply not true. It is
next Monday, I'll be in Portland, Oregon for the VA DOD Suicide Prevention Conference. They haven't had one in a while, and this is a huge conference, and they're looking just exactly at that. And what they're finding is it's the younger veterans that are committing suicide. It used to be a lot of the, 41% were Vietnam era.
Yeah.
Now, we're too old to commit. I don't know, but I'm just saying that now it's the younger, and we need to address that.
Yeah,
we need to
that's something I've been very passionate about. Right, is in my life, I've known a lot of Vietnam veterans, right, and looked up to them in many different ways and aspects, and to see the struggles of that community and things that they've dealt with over the years of their just being in the veteran status, right, and the sheer amount of suicides that have happened there. That what has been driving the numbers for a very long period of time. I think that we are a very short time away from seeing the GWAT people really falling into that category and taking it over. And to your point, right? We're coming off the backside of the Vietnam generation. Now we're coming into the Gulf War and GWAP periods, and if you look at the state of the veteran community today, right, there is a lot of anger. There is a lot of shame. There's a lot of like, man, I've watched Afghanistan fall in front of my eyes, right? It's like Saigon all over again, right?
I just saw my grandfather being treated like he was in Vietnam, and then I see my father being treated like he was, in OIF, OEF, or GWAT, and this is one of the reasons why you're not having a lot of veterans, or not veterans. You're not having a lot of people getting into the Army or getting into the services.
Certainly.
For the first time. Air Force didn't meet their numbers,
right?
Because why should I join something when the government's not going to take care of me?
Yeah, there's it goes back to I always mess this quote up, but George Washington quote from the period, saying you can judge the health of a nation by the how they treat their veterans, right? And when you're looking at the veterans of today and how the government is treating them and smacking around like they did with the PACT Act, and other things, right? Yeah. The people of the country is like, why would I want to do that? Right. Why want to go fight for this country and be exposed to something that I'll die from? If I don't get killed in combat, I'll die 10 years later from some crazy, brain cancer that I would normally never would have been exposed to.
Right. Yeah. We laugh about take 2 APCs and call me in the morning. The APC, the P was phenacetin, and we've killed so many kidneys with phenacetin, and this is what we learn. We learn from all these different things of what we're doing. So these burn pits, anthrax, all these anthrax injections that were mandatory. We don't know what the long-term health care effects are going to be, and that's where we really have to stay on top.
Yeah, man. I remember those.
My perspective is a little bit different. Okay, when I was a teenager, I was in the Boy Scouts. Yeah. And I remember when Dr. Bain, he was like, dysentery. I was in Vietnam, dysentery, What is dysentery? But anyways, we're on summer camp hikes. And Mark and Bobby were always the slowest, the fat kids in the back. And they were slow. And Dr. Bain would always be like, Mark, Bobby, get up to the front. He said, because you're only as fast as your slowest hikers. So our society will be judged by our weakest links. Yeah. So what does it say if we're doing big parades and glorious memorials and we're doing all this stuff like you said earlier? How hypocritical is it, thank you for your service, as you step over to that guy on the sidewalk without taking the time to say, hey, did you serve? And so we will be judged as a society by our weakest links. If you've got one homeless veteran on the street, then you ain't doing it right. Yeah.
There's a lot to be said about that. I think, and it's a personal opinion, just from my 45 rotations around the burning globe of gas, is that the way that the veteran community, we've lost a sense of compassion. Right, and let's just move the veteran community away from the conversation for a moment. Right, the sense of compassion within our community, like we are walking further away from it every day. Right, the social media, the devices that are in our hands,
because we're a minority.
Yeah, well, I think it's
we're a minority. Less than 1% serves in the military.
Understood. When I think about the compassion of just seeing somebody that's homeless on the side of the street, regardless of their military service or not, right? What does the majority of people in America do? Well, right? They walk past that individual, won't even pay that individual a thought. Right. Mm-hmm. And rather than sitting down next to him, like, and saying, hey, like, how are you doing? Right. And that is something I'm extraordinarily passionate about. And I started off, walking a little bit at the beginning of the program, but there was times in my career here at Grunt Style that, my staff would often find me hanging out with the homeless. And I would leave events just to go hang, and they would find me in like New York City down at the post office, sitting with the homeless and trying to, just have conversations with them and understanding where it was. Working with the homeless in Indianapolis, giving them a credit card of mine and saying, go charge it up before I say that it's stolen, right? And doing those things, right? And spending time with those individuals and saying, and just understanding how it is that you get here, that empathy of learning and saying, wow, like what is it? We don't do that as a society any longer. We just look at, it's instant, it's gratification, and if it's not any of those things, then we don't pay it any attention. We do not want to give it any attention, right? And but there are great people. That's not to say there aren't great people out there that are trying to make a difference. I'm saying in the majority of the aspects of our culture, we've really walked away from that compassionate aspect of the compassionate American, right? You go back to the 60s, the 70s, maybe even a little bit of the 80s, right? There was that idea of the compassionate American, like the world would look up to, like, oh my God, like the Americans are here. Now it's like the Americans are here. What are they going to do to overthrow our government?
Well, if I may, it's a very hot topic in July of 2024, because in June of 2018, Martin versus Boise said, hey, you're violating the Fourth Amendment or Eighth Amendment. It's cruel and unusual punishment to criminalize a homeless person, right, maybe due to no fault of their own, without even asking the person why you're homeless. Maybe it's not their fault that they're homeless. And so 6 years later, without getting political or judicial about it, the Supreme Court of the United States reverses and says, no, it's not cruel and unusual punishment. Societies have a right to enforce their laws because, blight. And so it's not for us really to decide. It's more for each individual community and mayor and council to decide if they want to lock up those homeless people. So America is very confused right now. Yeah. And what it requires is, like, I'm not a master social worker or even a BSW, but what I am is an outreach worker that really, really cares. Why? Because I have lived experience to the point where I got invited to go to a national conference in March because of the stuff that I do. Because like you said, I when I meet somebody, I can relate. I identify. You know what? I know what that desperation and that sense of lostness feels like. And it's like you just want to die. You don't care. You're like, you know what? I'm never going to get out of this hole. What's the point of even trying? Yeah. And you know what they say about homeless people? You're highly vulnerable, 9 times more likely to die. I mean, I'm 52. I have to shave to make myself look younger, but I am torn up. I mean, I was homeless for 3 years and it aged me.
Listen, I just read a story this morning about two homeless people. I forget what city it was in. One of the individuals was in a wheelchair and murdered the other, right? And they found the body wrapped up in a sleeping bag. Like, there is high vulnerability and risk that is within these little communities of homeless individuals. Correct. That drugs, violence, murder, all these things.
And this is very important. And I'll just say it real quick. In 2005, Maxwell Gladwell in the New Yorker published an article called $1 Million Murray. It was about a Vietnam veteran drunk, vodka drinking drunk named Murray Barr, and he was outside of the casinos in Reno. And the cops and the nurses that would arrest him and hospitalize him, the cops and nurses got married, and Murray was at their wedding. He was in jails, institutions. He racked up $1.2 million in taxpayer expenditures just to continuously cycle him in and out of jail, hospital, rehab, jail, hospital, rehab. And that's when everything changed. And so the whole point is stop acting like this whole homeless problem is something that you're just going to continuously manage with first responders, courts, judges, hospitals, rehabs. Stop managing it, solve it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what needs to happen. We need to get behind a 2015 policy called Housing First, and we need to start doing what the federal government has been saying for many years to do.
Yeah, and that's ultimately it's the biggest aspect is like let's follow the laws that already exist. We don't need to create new ones that are sidetracking or bypassing the existing laws, right? Because of whatever reasons, whatever lobbyists paid more money for that bill to move forward, right? And that's what it really comes down to. We talk a lot about follow the money within the things that are happening in the area of work that we are all in, and it always leads back to some this craziness that you're like, oh well, that's a head scratcher. I would never have seen that coming, but that is the nature of the beast that we have to deal with in this country, and we could do a better job. I firmly believe that.
We definitely can do a better job.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, and I think I think compassion, empathy. I think you're right. I think a lot of us, that we've lost that.
Yeah. I even seen it in our own community. Like a lot of veterans were like, "Oh, fuck that guy! You should have done a better job. You made a bad decision."
You see him out there panhandling, and looking for a job or looking for work. Well, go to the VA. Go. And sometimes I've looked at that person and said, why are you there? There's help available. Reaching out, and these people try to reach out. And then it's up to us to.
When I help a homeless person or a homeless veteran, and I give them a little sense of hope, because I care, and they see that I'm not there to manipulate them or to punish them or to hurt them or jeopardize them in some way or trick them, and I'm able to provide a service to them. And when you see the light come on in their eyes, and the restoration of the humanity.
Yeah.
That's why you were outside that convention with those guys. Mm-hmm. Because if you can make a difference in one person's life,
that's it.
Then that's your purpose.
One person at a time.
Yep. That's it. One person at a time. And, I think all of us have a responsibility of doing that, right? That's it. I don't care what, if you're listening and you find that to be a weak statement, then, maybe this programming isn't for you. Yeah. But I challenge anybody to get involved and try to find a way.
Veterans, homeless and veterans don't belong in the same sentence.
No, absolutely not.
We all took that same oath. We all took that, we signed that blank check, and that blank check was payable up into our lives. All these things, and that's what that person's there is there. Maybe he had a bad conduct discharge or something, things gone wrong or with that. And a lot of that happened. Yeah. But he still was a veteran, and he served this country.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think we could do more, and we challenge with every program for people to get involved and find ways that they can contribute. And one of the ways that you can contribute is getting involved if you're living in the state of Arizona with the Thomas Tanner Veteran Village, and making sure that is sustainable moving forward and continues to grow. I understand you guys are wanting to build this as a scalable, repeatable type of organization that is taken across the United States. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what we'd like to do, this is a model, and this is a model that we're building, and we think it's a good model. We've got a lot of backing. We've supported from the legislation out there, legislators, and we get funding. We've already gotten our funding. We're using a HUD project funding. We've got $2.7 million that was given to us. So, and then I'm going out with the other veterans, and veterans are helping one another. So it's veterans helping veterans, and building this, and then sustain it. That's where the importance is going to come in, the program. And we feel that just not giving a house, just not giving a home, we're giving a whole program. And I think that's where it's really, just like this, you talk about the San Antonio model, I think the Arizona model. The only thing is, it's hotter in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I'll piggyback off that. Wonderful question, wonderful conversation, by the way. That it's the need for a paradigm shift. we need to have this paradigm shift in our society where we stop, doing this obligatory, oh, we'll give you an apartment. And then we warehouse the person's problems until they turn it into a trap house or they blow their brains out. And that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to just give this lip service. Oh yeah, wraparound support, because that is it's like, oh yeah, wraparound support. Well, it gets cut out by construction costs and fraud. That's one thing. You watch a Frontline episode on that. But this concept with Tanner, what Tanner is building this year, the reason why it's going to be replicable and a proof of concept, and we're getting a lot of people involved, is because the performance metrics will come from the CDC's Center for Disease Control, social determinants of health. If you address all social determinants, then that is what creates the self-efficacy for somebody to get out of the subsidized environment, and then they can buy their own home. And that's what they're looking at. Like, say goodbye to your landlord. Like, let's help you level up.
Yeah.
Level up and level out. Make room for somebody else to come in.
Right.
Because there's stigma attached to all this. Well, what if I got to work 2 jobs and if I got to do all this for a living and take my kids to daycare and pay all this money, and if I have to do it, why do you get a handout? Well, but remember what we said earlier. What are you going to do? Just spend the next 20, 30 years managing it with blight all over the streets? Solve it.
Yeah.
Solve it. Give them the housing. Wrap them around with the support. Do it. Don't just give it lip service. And that's what we're gonna do it to show that it works properly. And then when you can showcase performance metrics based on the effective outer working of housing first, permanent supportive housing with wraparound services, then you can replicate it around the country, because you're proving that the model works.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'd be interesting, to see how that would work in the idea of going back on COLA, right? Is, how does the model of it work in Phoenix in comparison to San Diego? Right?
It's a funding yes, sir. Funding mechanism, funding stream mechanisms that are allocated based on an individual state's compliance and participation with HUD and the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. So they have NOFO streams, Notice of Funding Opportunity streams, that go out, but you're gauged on how well you abide by the federal system as to how much federal money you get. Right. Phoenix is a little bit behind schedule, and we're a little bit underserved. And so we need to really, really incorporate these mechanisms correctly, and do it right to earn the increased funding.
And the thing is, we're building affordable, sustainable housing, these casitas. Yeah. And we're using, latest, it's green, it's concrete that's impregnated with styrofoam. So it's got an R factor of 44, so it's perfect for the Arizona temperature. So it's going to be a lot easier to keep cool, a lot easier to keep warm, because of that doesn't mildew, and it's fire retardant. We don't have to worry about that, and it's cheaper than lumber.
Yeah. Well,
it's an imperative, Tim. It's an imperative situation in Phoenix, Arizona. It is a very unique environment. You've got a $30 billion fentanyl industry coming up through the southern border due to a lack of operational control. You can go on for forever about what that situation is. But you've also got 648 heat-related deaths every year.
Yeah.
Last year, we broke records. 650 people dead. We're barely solving homelessness at the same rate that they're dying.
Yeah.
This is an imperative crisis, humanitarian crisis. If somebody doesn't step up and start acting like Superman and fake it and start flying with your cape, if you don't start doing it, then more people are going to die. So, I'm one of those guys,
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to understand what your position on the opioid crisis is, right? I think, with it's a bit of an uphill battle. If I might start off here first by saying, I'm no big fan of big pharma and what is happening within the opioid addiction and within our country, right? You've got companies that are dumping these opioids into small communities around the country. We're not even talking about fentanyl. We're just talking about the prescribed bullshit,
right? Absolutely.
And then you get the community addicted to these things, and then you treat it with another opioid, called Suboxone or a variant thereof,
right?
And now they're on that for the rest of their lives, right? So you're feeding big pharma, and it goes back to everything that we're talking about here. They're big pharma manages the problem. They're not getting into the solution. Why? Because of the solution based would cut out the revenue stream, right?
Yeah, it's a monster. The subject matter is a monster. You're talking about a gigantic, it's like Monsanto or whatever. You're talking about an industry that, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
When people make $250,000 just to lobby, and then it's irreversible. And call your doctor if your eyes start bleeding. So get a hold of your doctor if you start if your rectal is all your intestines are falling out.
Right.
It might shake around, might not be the thing for you. But here's the deal: when it comes to opioids, when it comes to the pharmaceuticals, I saw this meme where it shows, it says a veteran when he walks out of the VA, and it's literally 75 pill bottles in the shape of a skeleton, and it's like a veteran walking out of the VA is just a stack of pill bottles. Now, look, I love the VA. I need the VA. I work with the VA. I know the directors of all the VAs. I work with a lot of people, and we're all on the same team. But there is an overprescribing issue.
Yeah.
And there is a propensity that, you're feeling a little anxiety? Well, let me give you these 3 psychotropic medications.
Yeah.
And now I've got shaky leg syndrome, and I'm filled with SSRI inhibitors, and I'm wondering why I can't sit with my friends at Denny's.
Right.
And then I'm wondering why I want to commit suicide.
Right.
And that leads to homelessness. So it's all a vicious, interrelated.
Right. That's why we need to look at and there's another time for another show, I'm sure, but other alternative methods that we need to look at. And the VA needs to, and I've been talking about that for the longest time. I mean, when we came back from Vietnam, we were treated, and they were giving us the wrong medications. And they were treating us for schizophrenia. They were treating us for paranoia. All they did was just treat symptoms. They didn't treat the root cause, and we didn't realize that all this medication that they've been giving us has really hurt us.
Yeah.
In the long term,
it's garbage. It's garbage.
That's right. It's garbage.
Right? And I'll say it this way, right? I'm not going to be a person that's going to say that these SSRIs or these drugs are, they don't have value. I'm not going to say that, right? But when it comes to the overprescribing of it all, that's where it becomes garbage, right? And the hurt, the medical harm that is happening because of this. When you have companies like Rick and Coleman that are creating opioids, and then they create the drug to counter the opioid, and they're dumping that into the veteran community to test that out, as they did with the VA in the early 90s. Like, that is a problem. And I can't sit here with the platform that we have and not say that's not a problem, and we need to be doing a better job of this.
You got that right.
Especially when my brothers and sisters are taking their lives. I have my best friend kill himself last year because he wanted to stop smoking. So what is he goes to the VA to get some smoking cessation, because they market and advertise that within the veteran community, and he goes and gets put on Wellbutrin, and a few months later he's taken his life. Like, this is out of control. And it is because we are overprescribing these things, and we are not spending the time of saying, hey, well, you're on Wellbutrin and you're on this other drug over here. Here's some of the things that could happen while you're mixing these drugs, right? And talk about that with the patient and saying, are you okay with that? Is there something else that you would like to try? Those conversations aren't happening. It's, to your point, it's like a veteran's walking out of the VA with 15 prescriptions of different psychotropics that are all like playing havoc on the system and messing up the homeostasis of an individual, all right? And we're wondering and scratching our heads why there's so many people committing suicide, or divorce rates, or homelessness, or all these issues where we look at the prescribing factors, and it all could be avoided if we just tried something a little bit different. Maybe had some informed consent, or used the medicine as it's intended by prescribing it, going through the therapy, and then getting off of it.
Right.
None of that is happening.
I'll compare what you're talking about to the homeless industry, just to kind of go back a little bit, just to make a point. The philosophy of the federal government is triage, diversion, and housing intervention services. Triage: do you need a bottle of water? Is your leg falling off? Do you need to go to the hospital? Do we need emergency services? Diversion: are you addicted to smoking 85 fentanyl pills a day with your disability service connected money, and you need to go to the VA, and you need substance abuse disorder counseling and therapy and treatment? That's diversion.
Yeah.
And then if those things don't work, then you give them housing, but you do them in that order. So my point is it that if we really, really care about the veteran, if it is our social, patriotic, moral obligation to uphold this contract that we have with veterans, in essence, then why aren't we taking a very close look at their individual needs and figuring out maybe they just need a 12-step program, or maybe they need ketamine, maybe they need MDMA, maybe they need psilocybin, maybe they would benefit from an alternative modality.
Yeah.
Maybe medical marijuana might chill them out.
Right.
So we just need to be open-minded and pay attention to the individual needs and stop corralling veterans like cattle in a system where we give them minimal attention, and definitely hold the system accountable, because I think the system gets a little bit big.
Yeah.
I don't know
Absolutely.
if that makes sense. But,
No, it makes absolute sense to me. Largely because of my understanding of the system itself and navigating it through over the years. When we get to my age, you become polypharmacy. And how much harm have we created from that polypharmacy? Yeah.
And that's what we need to try to start weaning off.
Yeah.
Is the polypharmacy.
I agree 100%. And that's what we talk about here on the show a lot, is how to get off of these things, how to expose ourselves to situations and things that are happening across the United States that we just may not know about within the veteran community, first responder community. Right. It's a whole other conversation of, I'd love to get your thoughts on another time of, the first responders, homelessness and mental health, and, how all these things are affecting that community. Because, when you think about the veteran, their exposures to combat are very, very small, right, in the grand scheme of things. When you think about that first responder, they're living 20 plus years of that every day, right?
That's a good point.
And they see a lot that, and there's not a lot of services for those individuals. But we'll bring you back on for another conversation there, because I'd love to hear your perspective from the state of Arizona. And, thank you guys for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us, Tim. Appreciate
Thanks for the platform. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I look forward to, doing some work with you guys on the Tanner Villages, and, seeing how the Grunt Style Foundation can be a part of, getting involved in the veterans issues of the state of Arizona.
This we'll defend.
That's right. That's what we're here to do, my friend.
Right.
And I love doing it. So with that being said, my friends, that is another episode of American Grit. Check out Thomas Tanner Veteran Villages in the state of Arizona, Maricopa County. You can Google them and get involved. Find a way to contribute. Make this thing a bigger and more viable operation. Share it. Get it into the hands of all the people that you know, and share this content. As we always say, we love doing this, and we love sharing different stories with you guys at home on things that are important to what we think is important. With that being said, until next time, my friends, be kind to one another and wash those stinking hands. We'll see you again soon.